marriage talk, little wedding talk, eh? Always fun. Guys, all right, so I'm going to get into a little MLS. I want to talk a little Atlantis. I want to talk a little Swiss-made watches, and then we'll close the show. So Atlantis, guys. This guy came on Atlantis the other day, or came on Joe Rogan the other day talking about Atlantis, and I'm like, the thing about this guy is like, I stumbled upon his channel years ago, a couple of years back, because I was onto the Richat structure as potentially a spot for Atlantis. It's just, let me show you what the Richat structure is. It is the Eye of the Sahara. It is literally, you go to the map, the astronauts could see this from space. Let's just take that off. We're going to be able to see it without, you could already see it on the map. It's right there, that little black dot. There, that little black dot. That is the Eye of the Sahara. And we're going to zoom in on that. And that is not the Eye of the Sahara. It's right next to it. It's right next to it, guys. Right there. It's the Eye of the Sahara. But hey, I was right on top of it. I mean, right on top of it. All right, let's zoom out. That's why. There you could see it. There's the eye. Now take a look at this erosion. Do you guys see the way these sweeping sands just seem to get... Wait, yeah, this way. Sweeping sands into the ocean. And meanwhile, over here is Cape Verde. Over here, the Canary Islands, where Cristiano Ronaldo is from, potentially an Atlantean. Cristiano Ronaldo from Atlantis, an Atlantean. And here's the Azores, which are also rumored to be potential spot for Atlantis. We'll get into a little bit more of that. So here, the Eye of the Sahara, visible from space. Look at it. Look at this Richat structure. So this is a circular structure. They're not exactly 100% sure how it formed. They think it may have to do with volcanic activity, rising, falling, rising, falling, rising, falling, of a bubbling effect and creating what we see here. Now, the reason they point to this as Atlantis is because the circular pattern. They said, "Oh, Atlantis had this weird circular port." Back in the rumors that we got handed down from Solon and the ancient Greeks and Plato, that's where we actually get the Atlantean myth from. The myth is passed down from Plato's great grandpa Solon, who was like a famous king of Greece. So Angus saying, isn't this episode from years ago? I'm pretty sure I've seen this. Nope. There's updates. There is updates. So this is new. He was just on, and I want to get into some of that.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Jimmy, I watched your whole series on Atlanta all day today. I've been watching for hours. I've been watching
the Sahara. In the Sahara Desert of Mauritania, called the Richat structure.
Yep.
It's also commonly referred to as the Eye of the Sahara.
Eye of the Sahara, correct.
It is a site that most people have never seen or heard of before, which is truly peculiar because it's so spectacular.
I'm super familiar with it.
Astronauts
to the point where I think it isn't
space.
Atlantis.
It is a geological feature that is
I don't think it is Atlantis
in nature.
I think it's very interesting. Joe Rogan's the fucking shit, dude.
It just so happens to match more than a dozen striking similarities to what Plato
Aaron
had described as the lost ancient capital.
Aaron Rodgers calls Joe Rogan Dr. Joe Rogan. I thought it was hilarious. Good Aaron Rodgers show earlier today, or from the other day from the Pat McAfee show.
And what's so spectacular about this is that it just so happens to match more than a dozen striking similarities to what Plato had described.
It matches, guys, but to me, I've studied this. I was on this with this guy for a minute. I rode this years ago and rode this journey, and I came to the conclusion that I don't think it is, but let's take a ride.
As the lost ancient capital city of Atlantis.
I almost feel like we're not going to do your video justice by just talking about it, because the video is so good
pulled up
and
if
you
we
go
want
into
to.
So many details. By the end of it, my jaw was dropped. I was like,
absolutely. There are some
shit.
jaw-dropping moments.
From
but still,
what you had the last time you were on the podcast
there's things that miss.
to what you put out now, it's even more compelling. Way more compelling.
I appreciate you saying that. And I guess to anyone that wants to check it out, I have a YouTube channel, new, or if I'm at some, and it says lost ancient Roman map.
This is a YouTube
has
channel.
Atlantis
It's called
and Sahara,
Bright
Africa.
Insight.
And that's kind of
Bright
where it goes from there. Is that
Insight.
there is a, actually, let me just mention real quick. Like, you're a very inquisitive individual. You have many interesting people that come and chat with you. And when I had asked you last time, you said that until you had saw my Plato
Okay,
had just
great.
Atlantis. And what's interesting is that the very first
hear
known
it.
king of Mauritania, which is where the Richat structure is located, is also
By the way, the Moors come from Mauritania, or at least Mauritania was established by Moors. You know what else was established by the Moors? Morocco.
their very first known king was also named Atlas. And though I'm not saying that that's the same individual,
What? Their king was named Atlas?
first king of Atlantis. And what's interesting is that the very first known king of Mauritania, which is where the Richat structure is located, is also their very first known king was also named Atlas. And though I'm not saying
Maybe
that
it's
that's
a
the
god
same
type king.
individual, but what we do today
maybe
is we
that's
pass
the
down
connection.
names, right? Like people are like, oh, my dad's name's John, and so is
Atlas,
my
that's
son.
interesting.
And so it's another
So
strike.
the first king of Mauritania, this place, this little structure. Mauritania is this land. People live out here. Doing what? I don't know. But the king of this land. Where'd it go?
Striking similarity, but it goes further than that.
First
like
one
there's geological
Was named Atlas. A little weird.
similarities.
Also, how do they know that? Do they have this written down? Because unless this is written in Egypt somehow, I don't know how they would have that, or unless it was some sort of oral tradition. I'm curious.
Such as the fact that Atlantis was said to be made up of red, black, and white color stone, which is another
Again, red, white, and black colored stone.
geological similarities, such as the fact that Atlantis was said to be made up of red, black, and white color stone, which is another similarity you see at the Richat structure. It was said to have an abundance of gold and that the outer walls were lined with it. And it turns out that Mauritania is loaded with gold. And not only that, the richest person ever known to exist in all of mankind is Mansa Musa of the Mali Empire, which consisted partly of modern-day Mauritania. And he was so rich from gold that he would be richer than Elon Musk and like Bezos combined almost. Like many unfathomable amount of billions of dollars. So that's another similarity.
What year was this?
Oh, this is 1300s or 1400s?
There he is.
Yeah, there we are. 1312, 1337.
What a great name, too.
Mansa Musa.
Yeah,
He's in Civilization 6.
But the
He's really
similarities
good with
don't end
money.
there. There was said to be an abundance of elephants, which is one reason why to suggest that Atlantis would have been in Africa is because, well, besides the fact that elephants are known to be throughout Africa, they used to be in Mauritania. They're unfortunately pretty much extinct there today.
Whoa,
But another
that's
little
something.
detail that most people aren't aware of because
Whoa.
they think of Atlantis.
Okay, holy shit. That's something, guys. Elephants in Atlantis? I mean, it could be Asia. There are Asian elephants, but interesting.
Elephants, which is one reason why to suggest that Atlantis would have been in Africa is because, well, besides the fact that elephants are known to be throughout Africa, they used to be in Mauritania. They're unfortunately pretty much extinct there today. But another little detail that most people aren't aware of because they think of Atlantis like, oh, it must be at the bottom of the ocean. Well, that's not exactly how Plato worded it. He did describe that the aftermath of Atlantis followed a catastrophic event involving water. Is that what was left of Atlantis was reeds of grass and a shoal of mud that prevented ships from navigating to and from. And
So a shoal of mud, what was left, and they couldn't ride a ship over that anymore? Interesting.
Atlantis was reeds of grass and a shoal of mud that prevented ships from navigating to and from. And what people don't realize is that Sahara Africa, up until about 4,500 to 5,000 years ago, was totally green. It was tropical. It had the largest network, or one of the largest networks of rivers ever known to exist. It had the largest freshwater lake ever known to exist, which is Mega Lake Chad, which, just to put this into perspective, it is, if you take all the North American Great Lakes combined, that's 94,000 square miles of surface area, whereas Mega Lake Chad was
Holy
139,000.
Whoa.
Massive. Additionally, Atlantis, the capital, was said to have a river that went just north of it or next to it, and the Tamanrasset River went right through the Richat structure or just north of it, went all the way to the Atlas Mountains that I described, which is in modern-day Morocco,
Here are the Atlas
and
Mountains up here.
The evidence is that it existed at that same period of time when Atlantis was said to be around 11,600 years ago prior to its destruction, up until about 5,000 years ago. So going back to my point, like a lot of people see the Sahara Desert and they don't realize that this place was unbelievably different than it is today. And one of the things that's so important is that I know some people listening will hear Atlantis.
See this right now?
Think, oh, it didn't exist.
Right.
So different than it is today. I mean, this used to be lush and green. And now look at it. And then you see these sweeping sands. Look at these sweeping sands pulling out over this Richat structure. I mean, they out there, I wonder if they want it to be known as Atlantis because it could get more tourism to Mauritania, right?
Whether it existed or not, the evidence that we're going to chat about today to show you that there is conclusive evidence, I would say, that catastrophic water erosion, that the ocean had blasted through the Sahara tens of millions of years more recently than previously known. According to the science...
You have me right there. That I absolutely agree with. I don't think it's Atlantis once again, but still what he's talking about, these sweeping waters moving and causing catastrophic destruction upon this landmass here, potentially this Richat structure area. Very true. Because look, I mean, look at it.
56 to 66 million years ago was the time of the Trans-Saharan Seaway, which was the last time the ocean blasted through it. However, there are a few lines of evidence that say otherwise. Besides the fact that anyone that looks at the Sahara Desert through the Google Earth app, you can see fluvial striations, which is signature traits of water erosion.
That's what he's talking about. This
confirmed by other experts that look into these things. As far I like to mention Randall Carlson. He's someone that's analyzed the area and has said, yes, this is catastrophic water erosion. So one of the signature lines of evidence that suggests that the ocean blasted through it far more recently was the largest volcano in Sahara Africa is in Chad. It's Mount Kusi, and there's a lava flow that goes through it that is dated at 12,000 or so years ago. The volcano itself is supposed to be somewhere between 1.2 and 2.3 million years ago. But if you look at Mount Kusi to the south, you can see, and I don't know, Jamie, if you're able to bring up one of the photos of that mountain chain, but you can see that the water erosion cuts off that lava flow directly to the south. Yeah, keep going over. A little bit right there. Okay, so go over a couple. That is the mountain, and you can see those striations, which are signature traits of water erosion. All those white blemishes are salt, and I should point out real quick that it is a confirmed fact that much of the Sahara has surface level salt. And you see those white blemishes on that mountain? That is not cloud, that is not snow. Those are salt deposits.
And surface level salt that would have been from the ocean?
That is what I suggest, because in the middle of that caldera, you have huge patches of salt. And is it reasonable to suggest that that salt existed before the creation of that volcano? Because it seems to me that all that that salt would burn up. And,
right.
and not only that, there is scientific studies that show that there are gastropods, which are sea life, that existed inside that caldera that used to be 1,000 feet deep and dried up just a few thousand years ago. So the fact that this is an 11,000-foot volcano that has salt on top of it.
I had to slow that down there for a second because I am like, what?
I would say is corresponding evidence that the ocean had once went through it. And if you go over a couple more images, Jamie, you will see far better images that show you that. Okay, so notice how it cuts off. You see to the black right here? That is a lava flow that's dated around 12,000 or so years ago. And regardless of whether the volcano or that water erosion happened 12,000 years ago or 2 million years ago, that in itself is evidence that the ocean blasted through the Sahara Desert literally 50 to 60 million years more recently than previously known. And the implications of this, as far as climate science, as far as the topic of geology and cataclysms, cannot be overstated. I mean, does it not look like that lava flow was cut off by whatever type of erosion that is?
I don't think this is the same structure. This is a really cool one. Structure he's talking about, the Kusi Mountains.
Does it? I mean, that's
Yeah, completely. Yeah, it's such a clean line, and it aligns with all the water erosion marks that are to the left of it. Can you make that smaller, Jamie? Can you make it stretch it out? Yeah.
and. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Nothing. It's just like you could really clearly see that it looks like a line, like a water line passed through what was marked by the volcanic eruption.
And this is one thing I say, and like it's visible to anyone that has eyes to see, but it turns out that the Sahara Desert is one of the least studied places on Earth, mostly because it's so
Super
inhospitable.
inhospitable.
It's an average of 125 degrees Fahrenheit
owe me a
much
Coke.
of the year. It is so unbelievably big that just to get out there, I mean, you need reliable aircraft or vehicles. There is most of the countries out there are,
Jinx.
I regret to say, third world in that you just don't have supplies. It's not feasible to just travel out there with a whole team on a whim. So most of it is essentially undocumented. And
They
it's
find a lot of Spinosaurus dinosaur skeletons out there in Mauritania.
not a site. The Sahara as a whole isn't a site that gets much attention, unfortunately.
Ben, we got to bring you in, otherwise it's going to talk forever.
No, I was going to say something that you mentioned about the origin of, I guess, Plato's description. You said it was mud and grasses was like the
Yes.
aftermath. It's interesting. It's the topic I've been exploring recently. Is that does match some of the translations of origin stories from the ancient Egyptians. So it's like that the Temple of Horus at Edfu. It's this amazing structure, but it's literally covered head to toe in hieroglyphs and descriptions.
But those same Egyptians told Solon that they were Solon's ancestors, not the Egyptians' ancestors. So that's where I'm like,
and all these types of things. But one of the stories in the translations they do talk about is this, what they would call the original point, or the primordial mound, the primordial island. They describe it as being an island that was surrounded by water that was sinking, and essentially these reeds that were growing on it that created a falcon's perch, and then the god, it was either Horus or Hurun, one of the falcon gods, alights on this perch and then gains divinity. But as part of that story, I mean, they and then he goes and forms Kemet, essentially the motherland Egypt, and it's this tale of them, I guess, their civilization moving and migrating to this new land. But
that's what it sounds
they
like.
do talk about a whole stack of unknown gods and a whole culture that existed before that.
That existed but are just gone now.
It's an interesting correlation. It's something that Graham Hancock speculated about in his work with the Temple of Horus at Edfu. You know, they also have, you know, catastrophic flood myths.
And there's also there's also throughout this area here on Sicily. There's like secret little there's like secret. What is it? No, is it Corsica? One of these islands has like ancient aligned temples. And I'm sure that there's probably ancient temples on every single, or at least remnants of an ancient temple on every single one of these islands, right? So what does that have to do with Atlantis? What if that culture, that ancient culture, was connected to Atlantis? It's sea peoples. I always wonder about the sea people. Who were the sea people? The sea peoples. An array of aggressive seafarers who invaded the eastern Anatolia, Syria, Palestine, Cyprus, and Egypt toward the end of the Bronze Age in the 13th century BC. They invaded over here. Well, if they invaded over here, it would make more sense that they're probably coming from over here, this area, or up here, the sea peoples. But also, did those sea peoples come from here, from Atlantis, from outside the pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar? Or is it over here in the Azores? All right, let's go back to it.
And things like this, but it may be that whatever prior civilization, and that's might have been where the dynastic Egyptians actually got their origins from, because it seems clear that they've inherited some things from the past. That's a story they themselves tell.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that the story of Atlantis had come from Egypt.
That's one of the most bizarre parts about it. I didn't know this until just a few years ago either. It's like, oh, wait a second. Plato, his distant relative Solon had traveled there in search of knowledge because Egypt was the place to go for it. And
it was the priests of the Delta that told Solon, and they said that so 6,000 years or 9,000 years, prior to the time of Solon was when the sinking of this city happened, and that works out to be 9,600 BC, so 11,600 years ago, which is bang on exactly where now the geological evidence points to basically the end of the Younger Dryas cataclysms. Like we know something happened at the start at like 12,800, 900 years, and then 11,600 years ago was that end of the Younger Dryas that brought us up out of the cold spell and into the Holocene.
Isn't it crazy that that's a full 1,000 years, and we think about it in like the same time period? Like, yeah, I mean, around that time.
I know.
We're
Just playing around with it.
literally 11,600 to 12,800. We're literally talking about 1,000 fucking years.
It is.
It's so much time.
It's a lot of time. So this guy's channel is Bright Insight. I thought we could listen to a quick video.
Possible that no one is talking about this. As I've shared in recent videos, the inexplicable catastrophic water erosion that is clearly visible throughout the Sahara Desert is so extreme that even the stripped bedrock scarring from whatever this mysterious flood event was can easily be observed from space. But the only thing more bizarre than finding such profound water erosion in the middle of the Sahara Desert, of all places, is the fact that virtually nobody within the scientific or academic community seems to be aware of it, much less discussing it.
That's the thing that's weird to me. I've seen this thing before. I've seen this, but like, it doesn't feel like it gets enough attention. They look at it and it's like, oh, maybe it doesn't get enough attention because it is so inaccessible, so hard to reach. And really, without Google Earth and the internet, a lot of people weren't exposed to this idea.
Which I have to say, I find quite strange. Yet, the signature traits of a cataclysmic flood event are visible to all who have eyes to see. And you certainly do not have to be a geologist to distinguish the natural characteristics of water striations. But thanks to the internet, you can quite literally access undergraduate course curriculum in geomorphology that teaches us exactly what water erosion over bedrock looks like. Now, the reason why this is so important to understand is because according to everything we've been taught involving the history of climate change on Earth, any recent catastrophic water erosion in the Sahara Desert is simply not supposed to exist or even be possible, leading many to ignore this obvious fluvial erosion and foolishly dismiss it as being created by the wind and nothing more.
When you realize Sahara proves a great flood actually happened. I stumbled on this guy years before he even hopped on Rogan when I was really interested into trying to figure out where Atlantis is, because I think Atlantis is real. I think Atlantis is real. The way I look at history, the way I've studied history, and the way I've looked at that myth, or at least the more research I come into terms with, really makes me think that place is a real, or at least was a real place, or the idea of it was real at one time. It was some place. Where? I don't know. I think it was somewhere in this picture. Somewhere in this picture is Atlantis, right? Some people say, oh, it was America. Some people say, oh, it's Puerto Rico, Cuba area. Some people say, they might be right. Some people say it's the Azores. Look at this little circle here. But flipped like a mud thing. So, does that fit something out maybe over here? Cape Verde. Look at that little volcano. Look at that. That's an undersea volcano. You can just see everything. You want to see something crazy? Take a look at this. Guys, what is that? Look at that. That's just the crust coming apart, guys. That's the Earth's crust. And that's where two crusts meet. Isn't that nuts? Google Earth is so cool, showing these. And I also think, look at the ocean. It looks like sometimes, it looks like things were scraped. Look at this. This looks like a surface of a moon. Like something was just scraped across this. Maybe could have been a giant iceberg, right? Or giant rocks. Or it could be stress in the subterranean plates. Well, hello. Let's finish this.
Because after all, the idea of an ancient flood event is apparently far too fringe and pseudo to entertain, which I have to say is such a bizarre and honestly lazy thing to suggest on something that is so easily verifiable. I mean, there are so many places on Earth that are known for consistently high wind conditions, and none of them have any sort of striations such as those found in the Sahara. And the reason for this is because this is simply not what wind erosion looks like. Simply research the 10 windiest places on Earth and then view them from satellite imagery via the Google Earth app, and you will observe with your own eyes that none of these locations have any level of striations whatsoever. In fact, the #1 windiest place on Earth is Commonwealth Bay in Antarctica. And if there was any type of geological element that would make striations easy to form, it would be in snow and ice rather than bedrock. Yet you'll notice that none of these striations exist anywhere in Antarctica. Go down the list of the windiest places on Earth, will it be Wellington, New Zealand, which is #2, or Bridge Creek in the state of Kansas, not far from Dodge City, which is the 3rd windiest, or Mount Washington in the state of New Hampshire.
Where do you guys think the Nazi base is? Where do you guys think the secret Nazi base is? Or can we not get to it? Can we not see it on the map? There actually is. I mean, you could actually look that up. There's somewhere there is.
Hampshire at #4.
In Antarctica.
And go all the way down the list and you'll notice the same thing every time. A complete and total lack of striations of any kind. Make no mistake, the stripped bedrock striations found throughout the Sahara Desert were created by a force of water, just like they teach would-be geologists in college. Like I always say, look and think for yourself. We all have the ability to fact-check details from our smartphones and laptops with simple movements of our fingertips. What an amazing time to be alive, am I right? But if comparisons are not convincing enough, the very fact that enormous quantities of salt exist in all prior mentioned areas of fluvial erosion is additional corresponding evidence that seawater had settled and later evaporated here following whatever this mysterious event was that blasted its way through the Sahara. Like I mentioned in my prior video, this force of water even cut its way through a 12,000-year-old lava flow, which is hard evidence that this event happened far more recently in our past than anyone thought possible. You can literally see the line of erosion that cuts off and erases that very lava flow, which nobody else seems to be discussing. And speaking of things that no one else seems to be talking about, and if everything I've shared so far isn't enough to convince you that the ocean was the cause of all this erosion, wait until you see what I found on the other side of the world. Notice those small white blemishes in the middle of Australia.
Sure.
Those are salt flats that make up the region of Lake Eyre, an ancient lake that sits 15 meters or nearly 50
We got salt flats in America too.
feet below sea level. And notice the unique geological pattern that connects it to the north. Look at all those striations, identical to those that we see in the Sahara. And not only that, they are covered in salt. And so when you consider this region's elevation below sea level and that it once obviously connected to the ocean at the south, it could not be more apparent that a massive force of water once blasted its way.
By the way, guys, it's not shocking that we're learning new things about the Earth as we come to more information, more people learn things, and we stand on the shoulders of everybody who we have learned on. Like,
Through the middle of Australia as well. This similarity is highly significant considering that many struggle to wrap their head around the idea that the Sahara was blasted by the ocean when much of the region is.
do you guys see this? Holy shit. You guys see that pattern? Let me show you something. Is this? So, all right. So, I liked it when he used to play Fortnite. So, you see ancient Greece here and all these islands? Well, ancient Greece and Turkey, it all used to be together. You guys see how it, do you guys can see how it all used to be together? And eventually something happened here with the Black Sea in this area, and there was some sort of explosion. Land explosion. I wonder if that caused anything to go, you know, look at this. Water to go right and left. And where would it go? It'd go almost very similar. It's like, and left. I don't know, just my little theory. It's fun to play theory. I just love playing Atlantis theory. So fun. Atlantis theory is so freaking fun.
It's currently about 1,000 feet above sea level. At least that's where it is today. However, that certainly was not always the case, as the evidence shows. And considering the consistent below sea level elevation in this region of Australia, along with the profound signatures of water-induced erosion, and along with the layer of salt that sits on top of it, in fact, so much salt that it can be clearly seen from space.
Pens down, everyone. All right, what was the gradient?
When you tie all these fascinating details together, it makes it very easy for anyone to understand that whatever happened here also happened to the Sahara, and it wasn't wind.
Okay, I follow.
And by the way, it must be
Yeah, ice, water.
pointed out that whatever this event was is not limited to the Sahara, because
And imagine, look at, oh, whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa. Now imagine, if you will, an ice shelf perched right upon this area. Right there where the Richat structure is, there is a pulsating, if you will, volcanic uproot, right? That's where this dome comes. And meanwhile, above it is the cooling ice. So it creates a weird ice. The ice above it has a weird cooling effect on a strong cooling effect on this volcanic thing as it happens. It rises, pops, cools, rises, pops, cools, rises, pops, cools, rises, pops, bounces off of the ice sheet, eventually causing this ice sheet to melt, give way, and cause a chaotic shift of the ice sliding off of the land into the ocean, creating all these striations here.
if you evaluate the surrounding region,
And
you'll notice that whatever
I just want to say, the ice is not just here. The ice shelf would be here. The whole thing would be ice shelf. By the way, this area 5,000, 10,000 years ago used to be lush green forest. But during the time of the Romans, ancient Romans, it was not. Look closer to this, but yet still they had the ancient Moroccans out there who brought a lot of hell and fight to the Romans, including Hannibal, that famous general. This is why I love Atlantis theory. It connects history.
this event was, it clearly ripped its way through the modern-day country of Sudan and Saudi Arabia and
Back.
the region of the Red Sea
And to the
Persian
left.
Gulf.
Back to the left.
Arabia and the region of the Red Sea and Persian Gulf, respectively.
Okay, wait.
In fact, if you expand your search, you'll start to realize that whatever this event was seems to have originated either directly out of the Mediterranean Sea.
Remember what I said? Remember what I said
Or
about the
perhaps even north of it.
Remember what I said? Not that this guy's, it's just like, it's just interesting that these theories that we kind of develop, and it's like we're onto something, guys.
This raises many questions, and I'm going to explore this topic thoroughly in an upcoming video where I will share.
None of this looked like this 5,000 years ago, guys. This bright orange, burnt desert wasn't there. Land was there, but it was a different biome. Different creatures live there. Lions, tigers. I mean, of course they are in Asia and in Africa, but up here there used to be lions and tigers and stuff like that. Up there in Europe, in Turkey.
More thoughts on what may have actually happened to cause
The Nile used to be way more lush and green. You see all this? Way more lush and green all along it. That's how they survived.
all this, but I have to say we must consider that the nature of certain cataclysmic events on Earth may very well be way worse than most people ever considered. But if there was one takeaway from all of this, it's the realization that the Sahara Desert was blasted by the ocean tens of millions of years more recently than what was previously known, and nobody within the scientific or academic community seems to even be aware of it, which is startling because the
That's what's weird. It's like, how are we, the amateur scientists, knocking on this door? And where are the real, the non-amateur, the ones, or do you have to get paid, or is there no money in this?
implications of whatever this event was is truly a game changer in our understanding of Earth's true geological history, and this cannot be ignored. Leave a comment and share your thoughts on all of this.
Interesting stuff. I thought he's got a longer video, The Secret Files on the Eye of the Sahara and the Lost Ancient City of Atlantis. If you want to check that out, go check it out on the Bright Insight. As in Yoshiyokio saying, we're lucky stuff says stays the same we're lucky that stuff stays the same from day to day. The surface of Mars changes landscapes a couple of times a day due to the wind. Surface of Mars wind. Surface winds typically move about 16 to 32 kilometers. That's about 10 to 20 miles per hour on Mars. Oh, let's do this. No, that's old. I like to do the newest articles. No, we don't know how old this was. ASU? We don't know how new this is, though. Does it give me a date? There's no date. See, I'm a born researcher, right? See this? There's no date on this that I could determine when this information is true or when it was true. So not a great source, even though it is an ASU website. So it's a decent source, not a great source. Source hunting, the fact and fiction. Winds on Mars. Understanding the red planets. The film The Martian saw astronaut Mark Watney marooned on Mars after a dust storm threatened to topple his crew's ascent aircraft. Although the film is pretty true to the science and technology that would be needed for a human mission to Mars, this opening scene was played with a lot of dramatic license. Even though Martian wind can peak up over 100 kilometers per hour, the atmosphere is so thin, you'd barely notice this in a spacesuit. You'd barely notice the wind going that hard. That's not to say a more complete understanding of Martian winds is not needed. Apparently, they are working on that. Angus saying you should be able to get recent information as we have rovers on it, dude. Dude. Can we get a live feed on that? That'd be awesome. Can you imagine living 1812 Philadelphia? Imagine being 1858 somewhere in Kansas City, and you have a picture of not just the moon, but of Mars. This is mind-boggling stuff. Do you guys think anything ever lived on Mars at a time? Or was there... They have found water. But do you think there was life that was there and potentially, basically got destroyed at some point? That's interesting. Love that. Dude, this is why it's so cool. All right. Real quick, dig into some Randall Carlson here. Cosmographia.
To summarize all this, I think what I've tried to show here is that the Richat structure is a very interesting thing, worthy of study in its own right.
Yes, I agree with everything you're saying there. It's interesting. It's worthy of study. I don't think it's Atlantis, though, but we'll see.
But I would not conclude that was Atlantis. For one thing, being 1,500 feet above sea level, when Plato clearly describes Atlantis subsiding and being submerged beneath the Atlantic Ocean. I don't know how you would square something, and there's no evidence that I'm aware of.
Well, maybe Randall, maybe it was submerged at one time. Maybe something happened where this area was submerged at one time and then it was unsubmerged. But I'll take your word for it that I agree. We're probably looking at a different location for Atlantis.
Under the ocean.
Water has been found on Mars with some type of bacteria in it. So that is amounts of life. That is some amounts of life, but I wonder how much life truly, existed on Mars. Was there anything more than bigger than single cell organisms and anything like that? Was there ecosystems, full-fledged ecosystems with food chain webs? And systems, elemental systems like the carbon system, say, or the water system, H2O. The way the water system works here there had to be some sort of water system, or because how did water form there? But right, but to what degree?
Until you go back, way back, when the deposition of those limestones occurred, which obviously was not within any time frame that would be consistent with Atlantis. However, it does appear that there were extreme floods and fluvial erosion over the plateau that would have been ultimately responsible for exposing the core of this unique structure that would have been buried beneath, many hundreds of feet, maybe thousands of feet of bedrock.
Tokyo saying, I thought Atlantis was in the Atlantic. That's what Randall Carlson would agree with you. This is the Atlantic Ocean. And right here, this is not the Atlantic Ocean. It's next to it. And that's one of Randall's arguments is, maybe it's not that. And I tend to agree. He thinks it could be this. I wonder if it could be Ronaldo's hometown, the Canary Islands. What if Ronaldo is an Atlantean and that's why he is so superhuman? Or has that ability? I don't know. Just floating ideas here.
At one time. So I'm going with the natural explanation that it's a domal uplift.
Tokyo saying we might have nuked ourselves into oblivion at one point and came to Earth. Maybe we fled from Mars. That's possible. I've heard that. I've heard that theory. Right? I've definitely heard that. You look at the belt. Of the belt of broken up comets and whatever is that that between us and Mars and the rest of the planets, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter. What if something hit something and it changed our whole little galaxy, our whole little solar system, and altered where Mars and Earth were? Well, Earth is currently in the Goldilocks zone. They call it the Goldilocks zone, but here's the thing about the Goldilocks zone. That's a guess. That's the best guess they got. They're like, yeah, we think that this is the best place. And that, because we're here. So this must be where life grows. But it's possible life grows outside of the Goldilocks zone as well.
Lift, shear off the top.
I gotta run to the bathroom. I'll be right back here as Randall tells us a little bit more. I
exposes the rings, that it's based on a magma plume. Possibly the idea that there could be an impact event somewhere in its genesis, although the opinions that have pretty much emerged in the recent studies of this, which include geophysical surveys and on-site sampling and things like that, using Raman spectroscopy and various sophisticated technologies to identify the minerals and the composition of the basalts and so on, that, yeah, it clearly is a natural feature. A magnificent natural feature that was occupied by various groups of people. And if there was a civilization during the Ice Age that could have visited it and could have been a source of inspiration. But I've thought for a long time that many of the circular structures that were impacts might have served as inspiration. And the number of large circles that we find in this obsession with circles in so many ancient cultures. Look at Avebury and then look at Newark, right? And what we just looked at, the Portsmouth with these multiple ringed structures. So somewhere that idea implanted itself in the human brain. So hopefully we've covered enough now that I think we can, I don't know how somebody is going to now come back and make the argument that this was in fact the literal Atlantis, right? Because it's just too many details inconsistent with Plato's account. And Plato's Yeah.
I think you answered the question. The question that a lot of viewers had was they want to hear what you think about it, and that's what you have just done. So,
Yeah,
I don't think
that's
there's going
what
to
I
be a lot of fighting about this. I mean, there might be one or two guys, but
Oh, there's going to be an all-out brawl.
Let's skip these
And
guys.
what we come up with is a model that's pretty damn consistent with his scenario. And I tried to show, and
He's talking about Plato.
we certainly didn't cover all of the science. There was all kinds of the science, the marine geology and the oceanography and stuff we didn't get into. We got into enough to show that this idea that subsidence of the ocean bottom is not woo, it's not inconsistent. It could have been very substantial, could have been several thousand feet, right? We've shown
So
that there was
the island
major catastrophic events that occurred in the Atlantic Ocean.
sank into
whose
the
timing
ocean.
was consistent with Plato's chronology.
And that's consistent, right? So where did an island sink into the ocean? Well, let me tell you, these islands look very much exposed. Well, maybe it sank and was re-exposed, or maybe it just outright sank. Well, here's some candidates. Sank. Here's some candidates. Ooh, it looks a little round almost. Look at that. We just find Atlantis here, guys? I mean, it's fun to speculate. But this is actually where Randall does think that, see these ridges? See these ridges in the crust? This is recent activity. All of this. This is new. How they figured that out? I don't know. Science. They figured it out, though. People who did have a vested interest in proving Atlantis were nothing. It's papers that have nothing to do with Atlantis. They have to do with fluidial movement in the ocean and landmass. And they were just talking about the Azores area and how it's interesting that there's been seemingly recent shifts in the last couple thousand years of this area. And they're trying to figure out, were there other islands here that have disappeared? And it looks like there were.
Chronology, right? So you've got Plato's highly detailed account, which the question.
And that's the other thing. People want to downplay Plato's highly detailed account that came from Solon, his dad, his great-great-great-great-great-great-grandpa, who was a king of Greece. One of the most famous, perhaps the most famous king of Greece, Solon, related to Plato. Got the story from them, handed down in his family. There's something about it that's true, and it's not just. That's what's weird about this, because he taught people. Plato and Solon taught somebody. FC Neotoka say, okay, best Atlantis internationals, and where do they finish in the World Cup? The best Atlantean internationals. Here we go. Let's go, Leo. Okay, let's go Team Atlantis. That's gonna be a Messi. No, sorry, Ronaldo for sure. Any soccer players from Canary Islands? Let's try there. Jesus Alvaro, Kieran Ledesma, Fabio Gonzalez, Julian Marino plays for a female, the girl Portuguese team, the women Portuguese team, Benito del Toro, and Silvia Doblado. So boom, we got some Canary Islands, potentially some Atlanteans. Let's is there a look about Atlanteans? No, I don't know. It's Kaka. Oh, it's David Silva? David Silva's from the Canary Islands? Atlantis confirmed, guys. Come on. What more proof do you need? So there's one of our Atlantis internationals, David Silva. Ledesma. That's Jesse Rodriguez. Perez. Ramirez. Olivero. Ruben Castro. Heck yeah. What the hell's Ronaldo? Cristiano Ronaldo. Let's go to the hospital where he was born. Let's just take a look real quick. This is the hospital. This is where Cristiano was born, guys. Right where I think kind of around Atlantis. He'd be in my Atlantis top 11. And Angus saying if Messi's the GOAT, CR7's the mermaid. It's the mermaid. He's a merman. Merman. All right, back to it.
Question I ask over and over again is how much can you deviate from that and still be talking about Atlantis, right? Now we turn to the Richat structure, and basically what we're seeing is that we've got half a century or more of studies going back, all of which the controversies are surrounding the idea of how it was formed, but nobody.
Speaking of how it was formed, FC Neo Tokyo saying that Ronaldo wasn't born, dude. He was invented. The island looks sketch as fuck. Let's find out what island this is. It's the island of Madeira. Part of the Canary Islands, the Canarias, right? Take a look at it in the, look at that. That is a freaking mountain. Go to Las Palmas just for a moment. Just take a look at the photo. That's so sick. All right, can we go there and just plop down on the street? I need a good view. Yeah. Come on, can I walk? Yes. Boom. There. Look at that. We are here, the Canary Islands. Can you imagine a kid in 1812 being like, yep, all right, check. Oh, they think that freaking, they wouldn't know about T-Rex. They've never seen Jurassic Park like we have, right? Come on, get out of the way, trees. There it is. There's the grand, look at that. Look at that. The monster. Look at this monster. Look at this. This is that. Oh, look at this. Not very tall, but just big, large, intimidating. What is it? Why is nothing on there? But there is. There's tons. There's tons. There's, look. City. But that's just one part of the Canary Islands. That's not even where Ronaldo was born. Holy shnikes, guys. Look at this. Let's take a walk around Madeira real quick. Let's go to Quinta Grande. You take us to Quinta Grande. What the fuck? We're in a tunnel. Oh, that's epic. It's epic. Here we are in Portugal, Canary Islands, off the coast of Africa. But this is Portugal. Look at this. Absolutely.
He disputes the fact that it was other than a natural phenomenon.
Natural phenomenon, yeah.
Yeah, and you can't, I mean, when you're talking about gabbroic dikes that feed down into a demonstrable magma chamber, I mean, clearly that is a natural feature.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a geologic feature. It is not
Angus saying, I learned my second fact about the Canary Islands with Ronaldo being born there.
human-made.
Atlantean confirmed.
Perfect.
Next episode, Antarctic-Atlantis.
I was going to say, let's do the moon and prove that the Atlanteans came from the moon.
Well,
Atlanteans from Antarctica or Atlanteans from the moon?
when you said Antarctica, now, I know that there's been a couple of books or a book written.
Well, Antarctica drifted down to where it's at. It actually might have, it's possible.
Purportedly claiming or making the case that Atlantis was in Antarctica. I have no doubt that Antarctica's yield up all kinds of interesting secrets and mysteries and information.
There's some dinosaurs there
that
that
we're
have
going
been
to learn. And
a lot
nor
yet
would
to
I
be
rule
discovered.
out the possibility that there were times when there was major deglaciation episodes of Antarctica and it could have been colonized by people. I'm not going to rule that out.
possible.
However, again,
He's a scientist.
have a very difficult time stretching Plato's detailed accounts to make Atlantis put it in Antarctica.
No, impossible.
Especially when you can see what we've covered over these last, 4 or 5 episodes here.
Yeah.
You've got to confront, you got to address that information. You've got to address the information that there is empirical evidence of major subsidence along the mid-Atlantic ridge. You've got to address the evidence that the Azores Plateau could have been a substantial island during the Ice Age. So, I mean, if you're not addressing that, then, I don't know, don't waste my time anymore. But
Yeah, basically, right. Maybe that doesn't mean we don't want to go look at these other places.
of course not. I mean, all of these places are extremely interesting.
I mean, that's why the Richat structure is absolutely extremely interesting as a potential site for Atlanta. I mean, look, it's hop, skip, and a jump away. Oh, cool. We can go there. Let's go. We're going to Richat. We're going to Richat. We're going. No, put it back. I see it. You won't let me go? Come on, let me go. Why won't you let me see? Okay, well, look at this. Why? Wild. Don't know where we're at anymore, right? We want to check this out, but we can't. All right, we'll go back to it.
Right.
Invaluable.
Whatever. If there is an advanced, very ancient lost civilization in Antarctica, it just isn't Atlantis. It's just an ancient lost civilization that's in Antarctica.
Okay, I can give you that. There's definitely, if there is an ancient lost civilization in Antarctica, it's not Atlantis. It's not that one.
Yeah.
However, maybe it's related.
Yeah.
They all stray from Plato in one or many ways.
Right. That's right.
Now,
It's not acceptable.
Plato does describe, outlier colonies. I mean, he talks about Atlanteans coming all the way in, to the inner Mediterranean. Again, all this is hypothetical.
Okay.
But in staying conservative in terms of our hypothesizing, if you had a maritime culture in the mid-Atlantic, there's no reason why it also couldn't have colonized the United States, South America, the British Isles. I mean, if they were in the kind of culture that they would create. I mean, like what Plato's describing, triremes, which are going to be wooden sailing ships, right? Well, I mean, what's going to exist of that ever after 11, 12, 13,000 years? And then given the nature of the terminal ice age catastrophes that swept over huge regions of the Earth's surface, I mean,
and not just in that area, but I mean, he's talking about in America, 11,000 years ago, how like there's various places there that in America that like have these weird weather erosions and weird weather patterns that just, science has yet to properly explain or give good enough explanation to talk about why maybe this has to do with why there's missing remnants of civilizations in the Americas.
We wouldn't expect to find much of such a culture. I mean,
you wouldn't expect to find much, especially after an iceberg hits you.
If the Phoenician culture had existed 13, 14,000 years ago, what would we expect to find of it now? Probably not much.
Paper?
And as far as the ringed city structure that we were just looking at, now that would be the thing. If we found that submerged, I mean, that would be pretty convincing evidence. But I don't know. I mean, whether that
the guy we were listening to earlier saying, "Oh, that structure's above land, and it's that Richat structure."
was real or whether
this guy's aware of that possibility, but
flat top, submerged islands that they found the beach sand on.
Yeah, somewhere like that. Yeah,
down there.
And that's where we would be looking. And I think
they found submerged islands with beach sand on it, and beach sand is not typically found on islands that were never not submerged, right? So like an island that had eventually came out and was an island, it could be still an island underneath the water, but this island was above, somehow made sand, beach sand.
There remains to be seen some pretty interesting discoveries along the Azores Plateau and the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, and sunken islands generally in the Atlantic Ocean. And in fact, I mean, sometimes the clue is right in your face. I mean, the Atlantic Ocean, where does it get its name?
Right.
It's named after Atlantis. Whoever, way back whenever, named the Atlantic Ocean, they had Atlantis in mind.
Right.
Why?
I saw somebody commenting saying,
Why?
well, no, nobody believed that, Atlantis was, everybody believed that Plato just meant it as a metaphor, which of course is not true at all. I mean, if you go back and you look at the commentary, you realize that it was pretty much split down the middle. The pre-Socratics all believed in a literal Atlantis. The Aristotelians thought that Plato meant it as a metaphor, but the pre-Socratics and a lot of and then into the Pythagoreans, they all believed it was literal, that it actually existed, and so did the Arabs. There's enough references, vague references, to suggest that there was evidence that the Arabs and
They have Arab references that are totally separate from Plato references to Atlantis. There you go.
a lot of that tradition of Atlantis.
Oh, cool.
Now, there's a lot more that we could be talking about, but if people want to get that, they're going to have to buy the book. So
That's right.
Perfect.
Yep, print that slideshow, put it on Amazon.
That's right.
well, we probably didn't even look at half of the total number of slides.
Yeah.
So, but it was enough, I think, to lay out the rudiments of the case that I'm trying to make here.
I think so.
Yeah.
Very interesting stuff, guys. This Atlantean myth. I mean, it's just something calls to you. You guys have anything like that? Any mysteries that you often find yourself maybe wondering about, or the unsolvable ones, the ones that, maybe there's not enough proof, but it's fun to throw some thoughts out there, get the thinky computer rolling and theorize. I want to hear about the geology of the Richat structure.
Extrusive rock is the intrusive equivalent of basalt. So basalt comes out of the ground and spreads out in the atmosphere, right? Gabbro and that's an extrusive rock. Gabbro is an intrusive rock, but in other words, if the same magma comes up, but it doesn't breach the surface and flow out as basalt, crystallizes underground, that's typically, so gabbro or gabbroic rocks are the intrusive equivalent of basalts, right? And that's what you've got here. These are basically
like granite, or is that something else?
Well, granite is an intrusive because granite again is formed, under the ground. Like you can have granite, the magmas that form granite can flow out in.
Remember my theory, guys, where I said, what if there's ice above this? And that affects it. So it's forming. So originally it's forming and then it keeps melting the ice. So now there's water. And there's a top, and it's like a water, almost like a vacuum.
And it's tend to one side of the geochemical spectrum, more towards the silicate rocks, rather than the right. And a lot has to do with the chemical composition of the rocks, what kind of magmas are formed, and of course, that is oftentimes how you identify the distinct types of magma. Because, for example, here in these layers, you've got, let's see, I might have a better one here. Let's get to this. Okay, so in this cross section of the structure, you can see that the dots are sandstones, and then the sort of the little block diagram here, these are limestones, and then there's more sandstones, and these are really old rocks. They go back, hundreds of millions of years. But so basically what you've got is you've got this structure, you've got the gray areas, the magma welling up from below. You've got these
what if there's also water, trapped water, steam?
Existing, as it said earlier, pre-existing structural weaknesses, which to me, possibly two explanations. One would be that the pressures from below are great enough, and probably through tectonic processes, there have been fractures, but it's a fairly flat-lying basin there called the Taudeni Basin that the Richat structure is found in. And so are the pressures from below enough to cause the fracturing of the bedrock that then allows the extrusion of the magmas? Or conversely,
And like I said, throw that on top of or above underneath an ice sheet.
was there an impact that actually was able to cause the fractures? And once you had the cracks within this lid, this
No ice sheet at all.
rock lid that's holding everything down, it's now free to well up and come out. We'll leave that question for now. The point is that there were weaknesses within the overlying bedrock that allowed this magma to come up and flow out. And we've got different kinds. It's talking about here you can see these little cross sections represent each one of these plumes then becomes a volcano, right? And
by the way, guys, they have no idea how this formed. This is like the best guess they have, is what this guy's saying right now. This is the best guess for how this Richat structure was formed.
So you've got, these are basaltic magmas down below. And let's see, we'll go to the next one. And so what you're seeing here is that the magmas have gone through some hydrothermal changes and some chemical changes forming
chemical changes, maybe from water, from this ice sheet, that theoretical ice sheet that I've introduced, but could be other things.
Rhyolitic magmas. We're seeing that the overlying structure, as the magma wells out, the overlying structure is falling, essentially dropping down into the magma chamber that is now being voided of the magma. See, so as the pressure below is easing up, it's allowing the rock masses above to essentially subside into.
And now imagine water being in that, so it's steam, explode. It's like it creates this, and in a vacuum, it creates this weird effect. It's my theory.
Into the magma chamber. These arrows here show that the hydrothermal fluid. So there was water involved in this, which leaves a very characteristic fingerprint in the type of metamorphism that you see in the rocks. And so as these magmas pass through the overlying rocks, they will pick up the geochemical characteristics of these rocks.
Why would there be water involved here? Just wondering.
And so that is one of the ways that allows petrologists to identify, or volcanologists to identify the source of various rocks, because an event like this in Mauritania is not going to have the same geochemical signature as a similar event in eastern Washington. And see, so you've got quartzitic.
Which is interesting because there are similar coal deposits between Pennsylvania and Ireland. Go figure. Pennsylvania. Coal deposits. Pennsylvania. Ireland. It might be Scotland, but we'll check. Oh, it's the maybe it's just like some sort of Pennsylvania coal regions. Something there, right? Something's there.
Sandstones, and you've got these limestones. The limestones go back. I'm trying to remember. I think they're Ordovician. So I mean, they're old. 600 million years old.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of material over this that was removed to expose this thing. And here you can see further collapse of the structure and the beginning of the formation of the rings. And here in the middle, you have this, what they're referring to as the hydrothermal breccia. So you've got this tremendous mass at the very center of this thing. You've got this tremendous mass of brecciated rocks, right? The matrix that they're enclosed in is the cement was formed hydrothermally. So in other words, you're looking at this mass of stuff full of broken rock, all cemented together, and the cement was emplaced by highly mineralized flowing water. If you look at these, like if you look at this, you can see the arrows pointing. This is an offset fault where you're seeing, or a strike slip fault.
Yeah.
Right. You see that
Mhm.
moving, and those shear forces are tremendous, and they can cause metamorphism. And so then the overlying rock has now been eroded away, kind of leaving a cross section of what the structure looks like now. And you can see here as you're looking at it how it's been domed up.
Right.
Been domed
I was going
up.
to say that previous one, it looked like it was ramping down.
Domed up. This is the only one like this that they know of. That explains how.
Now it's a dome structure.
Now it's a dome structure.
Because
And
the
you can
outside
see
is eroded away.
right, and you can see these layers of rock are dipping or tilting outwards because they've done this, see, forming what are called cuestas.
So the question marks, that's basically saying we don't know how deep the magma chamber is beneath it. Is that
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So if we go back to here, here's a nice colored block diagram kind of showing the same thing. We see the magma chamber underneath. You see the conduits to the surface, how they coincide with the gabbroic rings. So this would have solidified under the surface of the ground.
Okay.
You guys see this? Okay, so the pressure pushes it.
And only later than when the overlying rock layers are stripped away are you going to see the underlying ring structure.
But what would make it so soft and weird that it would do that?
Sure. There's a fault system, like for example, right here.
I think we'll move on from that. Azores, I already know. What was this? This is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about.
Well, you got 2005, and this.
So if mer people are discovered, you smashing? No way.
Is the
there's some
Spartel
cartoon.
Bank.
There's some cartoon about that.
Let's pull this up here.
I made that joke.
So here's the Straits of Gibraltar, the Strait of Gibraltar, which is what Plato called the Pillars of Heracles.
This one will be quick, guys.
And then you
getting close to shutting down here. I was gonna talk about Swiss watches and what makes them so special, but maybe I'll save that for the next episode. I wanted to get into that.
got this square area here, which is the study area. And this is almost due east of the Azores, right, in the Gulf of Cadiz, right? So here's what this study showed in this area right here, which of course would have been in the direct pathway of any tsunami emanating from the triple junction there of the Azores Plateau area. And this is what this particular study is saying. It says numerous, and this appeared in the professional journal Geology, 2005. Numerous geographical similarities exist between Plato's descriptions of Atlantis and a paleo island, Spartel, in the western Straits of Gibraltar. The dialogues recount a catastrophic event that submerged the island circa 11.6.
This is nuts because this goes back to that mud island theory.
1,000 years ago in a single day and night due to violent earthquakes and floods. This sudden destruction is consistent with a great earthquake greater than 8.5 on the Richter scale and a tsunami, as in the Gulf of
Cadiz region in 1755 when tsunami run up heights reached 10 meters. An unusually thick turbidite dated as Ca12 Ka may coincide with the destructive event in Plato's account.
Here in that study area was an unusually thick turbidite. So the limited dating we've got is certainly not inconsistent.
So that paper, like directly references.
So the limited dating that they have on these areas seems to suggest that maybe Atlantis is out there. Angus saying I need to go to bed soon, getting up at 4 a.m. to pull out my large, clunky binoculars and hopefully spot Comet ZTF. Dude, heck yes. That reminds me of Aaron Rodgers talking about chilling out on his deck in his backyard and watching the whales go by. How cool. I mean, like, think about that. And it's such a similar, what a cool thing that we are able to do, guys. Like, you watch the whales or watch the comets. We're in such a different position than people were 100, 200, 300 years ago. It's immense. Absolutely immense. It's so cool. The types of telescopes that we have now, Kepler would be like, his head be spinning. You got digital ones that could come up with a digital image on my computer that I could zoom in, take a picture, look at this image off of it. Kepler would be shitting bricks.
They're really hell was Atlantis, right? But it's again consistent with the idea that there would have been cataclysmic events that affected the Atlantic Ocean basin and left their imprint on islands, on coastlines, and along the mid-Atlantic ridge itself.
Did they yank his geologist card for mentioning Atlantis?
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty amazing that they're sort of admitting that.
No.
So yeah, I mean, okay. So what we've seen over the last few episodes of this is that if we look at Plato's geography, it pretty much points directly to the area west of Strait of Gibraltar.
This way.
And we find that there is plenty of evidence of sunken islands, of massive subsidence along the mid-Atlantic ridge. We find evidence of catastrophic events, not only that might have happened at the end of the last ice age, but maybe episodic going back repeatedly, like that one study that suggested every 25,000 years, which is an interesting period of time, because think how close that is to the Great Year model of 25,920 years. This idea that we've inherited from ancient cultures that there is a pulse of change that is associated with that particular periodicity.
Weird, chat. How cool. You have telescopes on satellites looking at various objects, plus there's one close. I mean, in fact, you could have a telescope on another planet looking at something and you got the image. Like, oh man. In fact, let's have an image from space. Live image from space. Give me a NASA. Is this real? Let's do NASA Live. NASA Live. This dude's in space. Oh, it's just like the NASA channel. Yeah, we lost the files to how to get to the moon. Hey, take a look at this, guys. Live view of a comet. Best view coming in 20 minutes of C2022 E3. There it is. I mean, that's the best view we got right now, but people could look closer. Show you guys what this is. Live comet view. See, live comet. See what else we got. That's wild. Just a picture, but maybe it's just an updated. Wild. It chills sometimes looking at space, right? Possible supernova explosion. Just a guess. It just went from 0 to that. Beetlejuice. Don't say it 3 times, guys. Shh. We're looking at a live image. When I was in high school, we used to get high and listen to music and watch the live salvage of Earth on PBS. Dude, that's so hilarious. What we're able to do. This is a live volcano. Whoa! On Earth, somewhere, the lava is boiling. I like live trains. Oh, this is always so fun, guys. This train just keeps going and going. Whoa, whoa, whoa. We gotta go through that. Let's do that. Oh, this looks fun. All right, we're going for it. All right, boys and girls, we're going on a ride. Let's put on the music. Let's put on the tunes. No, let's go some. No. There we go. There we go. As we cool down the stream, it's been a great one. It's been a great Wednesday. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Thanks for FC Neo Tokyo and DPG hopping on. As we cool off, relax. Oh man, this is the way to end the stream. This is sick. Oh no, we're going in. Hold on. Hold. Make sure you got a nice little sweater on, maybe your coat, maybe some good gloves. This went from a sports stream to an edible journey. Yeah. Let me see. Where is it? There it is. Nope. No Thompson Tank Engine music. I was going to talk a little bit about the Swiss watches. I've been intrigued into those. It's been Mrs. Spitfire got me a nice little gift for our wedding, and man, it just made me reminded me, man, I love watches. I'm a watch guy. There it is. We're going through the tunnel with that. Hold on to your butts. I think I see light. I think I see the light at the end of the tunnel. Digging this. Yeah, what a stream. It never turned out how you expect. Magic every time. Thanks to you guys. Greatly appreciate you guys watching, hanging out, talking a little soccer with me. Catch you guys on the next one. Fire it up, footballers. And don't worry, I'm not leaving yet. I'm hanging in there. Things are getting tense. You still have not exited the tunnel. Thank you, saying, see you, James, in Tokyo. Have a good evening. Absolutely. You guys can see the tunnel, it's still there. I'm hanging in there. Making it all the way through. We'll figure out what we do next week, guys. Next Wednesday. Man, I got a new fun way of doing these streams, and today was one of the first little experiments in that vein, and I really liked the way it went. Had a lot of fun with you guys. Talked a lot of stuff I want to talk about, and then talked a lot of stuff that you guys want to talk about, and just like, man, it was, and stuff that you guys talk about was also like stuff that I want to talk about. So I'm like, ah. Here's your Death Metal Tokyo, courtesy of YouTube. Almost there. We're gonna make it. Oh, this is a long, wintry, cold tunnel. Can you imagine being a driver on this train? Is that snow? Or is that rock? The sunshine. Place you'd love to be. Look at this nice little mountain town. Ah, hey. Hey, people. Stopping by the Arna station. Stop for the people. Stop. There we go. Hold it. Hold the train. Tunnel. All right, chat. See you on the other side. Have a great evening. Thank you. Spitting fire. Catch you next time.